me thinking beyond what I normally thought before.
Well, let's take a short break here, and then we'll talk some more. If you're just joining us, my guest is filmmaker and writer Werner Hertzog. His new memoir is called Every Man for Himself and God Against All. We'll be right back. This is Fresh Air.
Programming is supported by UCare. Decomplicators are committed to making Medicare easier and helping you find the plan that fits your needs. You can review plan options and enroll online at ucare.org/Medicare.
Support comes from Little Moments Count. The Early Risers podcast is dedicated to helping families talk about race, even with young children. You can find Early Risers wherever you get your podcasts. Learn more at littlemomentscount.org.
This is Fresh Air. Let's get back to my interview with writer and filmmaker Werner Hertzog. His new memoir is called Every Man for Himself and God Against All. One of the films that made you famous is Aguirre, The Wrath of God. And this is a film about a conquistador leading a Spanish expedition in South America, searching for El Dorado, the city of gold. And he goes mad along the way. He calls himself the Wrath of God. What interests you about a mind that makes you want to write about it? Or you know...
Yeah. Well, there are somehow touching a chord that's in us, something mad or borderline mad, something of power and dementia and madness, and through such figures, all of a sudden we have it spelled out. We can feel it, we can touch it, we can read it and sense it, and start to compare it. Where I am standing, how mad am I myself?
Do you feel like you are mad?
No, I'm the only one in the entire profession who is clinically sane.
Explain that.
Oh, come on. I wouldn't have made some 80 films without having my wits together and my sanity and my professionalism. I'm the only one, when you look at the craze of Hollywood and all these red carpet events and the statements at the red carpet, which are all performative. It's all performative, borderline insanity in a way, or saccharine, pink sort of vanilla ice cream emotions. I'm the only one who is sane. The only one.
All right, I'm definitely taking your word for it.
Please make sure. And you can read it. Every single line in my memoirs shows you that I'm absolutely sane in an ocean of craze.
Aguirre is about a Spanish conquistador who goes mad, and you can argue that Fitzcarraldo is a little mad too. And the actor who you got to play both of them is Klaus Kinski, who you describe as a madman. And you knew him since you were 13 and he was 36. And you were living in the same boarding house. And you knew he'd go into rages. You'd witnessed his rages. Did it seem like a good idea to you to have somebody who seemed mad play madman? I mean, or was it just your confidence in him as an actor?
We have to be careful. I said it, yes, he was mad or in moments of paranoia, but he had splendid moments of friendship and warmth and insight. So he had quite a few facets. And of course, since I lived in the same boarding house with him, directly with him, and saw the tornado laying waste to the entire apartment. So I knew what was coming at me when some 9 or 10 years later I invited him to play the leading part in Aguirre, The Wrath of God. I knew it was going to be difficult, but I said to myself, so what? The real task now is, since he's such an incredible actor, since he has such a presence and dynamic and authority on the screen, I have to domesticate the wild beast somehow. All his crazy attitudes should not explode outside of the screen during a dinner or after dinner where he opens fire at a hut full of extras. It shouldn't happen. It should be all somehow organized for the screen itself. And I think that was my achievement.
outside of him actually firing into the tent, into the hut, which happened. So I guess you were partially successful with that?
No, not partially successful. I was successful because I made 5 films with him, and they all, when you look at them and forget about Kinski and forget about his private crazed personality and his egomania, forget about all this. There are 5 films out there that have something that you normally do not see in a movie. A presence and an intensity of a leading character that's unprecedented. I have only a few precedents are there, like the young Marlon Brando, for example. And no matter how difficult it was to tame him, to domesticate the beast, it doesn't matter. The only thing that counts, what do you see on the screen?
Well, you can't argue that his presence isn't remarkable on screen. I mean, you can't take your eyes off of him. But there is that thing that one person had part of his finger shot off when Kinski fired into the bamboo hut. So, I mean, that matters too. I mean, I understand that what really matters to you as a filmmaker is what you see on screen, but there was some collateral damage.
Yes, but that was the most serious thing that ever happened. And of course it is serious. And you have to cope with it. And I threatened Kinski. I was actually there. Wild rumors about it that I had a gun in my hands, and so that's not true. But I threatened him, and he understood this was not a joke anymore, and he had to be disciplined from now on. And through all the other films I made with him, never anything of this magnitude ever happened.
Let's take a break here. If you're just joining us, my guest is filmmaker Werner Hertzog. His new memoir is called Every Man for Himself and God Against All. We'll be right back after a short break. I'm Terry Gross, and this is Fresh Air.
Some passion, bold, inspiring.
The Neubauer Family Foundation supports WHYY's Fresh Air and its commitment to sharing ideas and encouraging meaningful conversation. Support for NPR comes from the station and from the Doris Duke Foundation, which aims to support the well-being of people and the planet for a more creative, equitable, and sustainable future. And from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, recognizing exceptionally creative individuals. This year's MacArthur Fellows and more information are at macfound.org.
Support comes from locally owned Cornerstone Copy Center, offering templates for wedding invitations, memorial programs, baby announcements, and more on their user-friendly website. Learn more at cornerstonecopy.com.
Sometimes personality differences spark musical brilliance. Just look at the Police, a band that turned out classics even as its members famously couldn't get along.
We look back on it, it all had a good effect. You know, I guess we realized eventually, decades later, that we make music for different reasons.
Stuart Copeland looks back at band's origins on the next morning edition from NPR News.
4 to 9 on NPR News. Time now is 8:30, and expect more tomorrow. Breaking news out of Lewiston, Maine tonight. Remain State Police are ordering residents to shelter in place because of an active shooter situation. The alert was made shortly after 7 p.m. Central Time, as the sheriff's office there reported law enforcement agencies were investigating 2 active shooter events. CNN is reporting 16 dead in those shootings, 50 to 60 injured. And so, of course, we'll be following that story throughout the evening. The BBC after 11 o'clock tonight, and of course, as I mentioned, much more on Morning Edition here on NPR News. Light rain,
It's
45
terrorists
degrees in Fargo-Moorhead,
attacking.
Duluth at 46. St. Cloud 52, Rochester 54. It's cloudy and 53 in the Twin Cities.
This is Fresh Air. I'm Terry Gross. Let's get back to my interview with writer and filmmaker Werner Hertzog. He makes movies about extremes, extreme personalities, situations, and places. His films, Aguirre, The Wrath of God, and Fitzcarraldo were both set and filmed in the Amazon jungle. Rescue Dawn is about an American fighter pilot who was shot down over Laos and managed to survive.
There's a
His
bell.
documentaries include Encounters at the End of the World, shot in Antarctica, and Grizzly Man, about a man who lives among grizzly bears in Alaska, thinking he's protecting them until he's killed and eaten by a grizzly. You grew up, well, your very early years were during World War II, and then you grew up in the aftermath. Your father was a Nazi, and he fought in the war, but he was mostly like in the supply room, I think. Yeah. And your mother was briefly a National Socialist. Did they talk with you ever about Nazism?
We didn't talk that much. My mother, it was obvious, she was very early on embarrassed about having been misguided, and she practically, of course, she had to raise all alone 3 children. There was no money. My father never paid anything to support us, and she became a completely different person. And of course, it was always lingering out there. And of course, I was fascinated by what happened to Germany. How is it possible that within a few years, such a cultured nation transforms into a world of barbarism?
Well, even your father was from an academic family. I mean, he was from a very educated family. He was an academic himself. So you must have wondered the same about your father. How could somebody who was educated from a very educated family?
Yes, and it happened to many other educated families. There was no one spared. I mean, Germany was almost 100% Nazi. Dissidents, yes, they were out there, but they ended up in concentration camps very quickly.
You know, your mother took you to Bavaria in the mountains to escape the bombing, but in retrospect, she also escaped the Nazis. She escaped her own country, her own people.
In a way, yes, but of course, in this village, there were also Nazis.
Oh, sure, I hadn't thought of that. Did
yes,
you know
there
that?
were also Nazis. Much later, it took some time. I thought, I didn't even know what Germany was. It was the valley where we grew up, in this remote place, and the waterfall in the gorge behind the house. That was our world. And of course, the daily struggle. We had no running water. You had to go to the well with a bucket. We didn't have any running water in the house, so my shower was the ice-cold water of the waterfall deep in the gorge. And hardly any electricity. I didn't know of the existence of cinema until I was 11. I think the first time I noticed that there was something like Germany, I must have been 7 or 8 years old. For me, the world was around me, and that was it. And of course, I started to question, and I started to understand, how does chaos and barbarism invade a fairly organized country. And that's why I wanted to go to the chaos of Eastern Congo after its independence, which I never reached, and I probably wouldn't have survived it.
Your parents had to undergo denazification after the war.
Yes.
Did they ever tell you what that entailed?
My mother and my father was always outside of my life. I hardly knew him.
Your father you hardly knew. Did your mother tell you?
Yes, but not very much. It was fairly laconic, and she said, look at me, that's me now. And I did a very, very severe mistake in my life, and my character had to readjust. I'm a different person. I think differently now. And so I accepted it. And for example, she was never a racist, never deep into Nazi ideology at all.
How do you think growing up during the war affected you, even though you were at a remove from it in the mountains? In the war and its aftermath.
It is more the aftermath and the restrictions. Or, for example, I noticed that we were hungry. That was the only thing that was really hard to take. Otherwise, that we lived in very deep poverty. I didn't notice. It was a normal thing. And everyone around us was impoverished. And so it was nothing really special. Only much later I understood what poverty meant. But that I had gone through it never affected me.
Although you say that, I'm wondering if you're thinking at all about the children in Israel and in Gaza. Like children in Israel were kidnapped. There's been missile attacks. Children in Gaza have getting bombed. Many children have been killed. I'm wondering if you're thinking about that a lot now.
Yes, you have somebody talking to you who grew up in the war. We were bombed out. There was a foot of glass shards and bricks and debris on my cradle when I was 14 days old. So, and then of course I grew up in post-war time, starvation, poverty, and since I had this experience, for me it's obvious that there shouldn't be any war. I'm against any war at all. And of course it is terrible what we are witnessing now. It is terrible. It is terrible, and it shouldn't be. And I hope it will come to a quick end.
I agree.
But what can I do? I cannot fight as a volunteer in this war.
Well, would you if you could? It sounds like you're against war and wouldn't want to participate in one.
You know, why I would participate if in Germany all of a sudden neo-Nazis started a rebellion, an armed rebellion, a coup d'etat. You would know who would be first one to rush back and pick up a weapon. It would be me. I would fight.
Because
something like times of the barbarism of the Nazis must not repeat itself. You see, as long as there's breath in me, I would fight.
I understand that.
And of course, having created the Holocaust, Germany has specific attention to Israel. There's no doubt, but we also now, since it will be terrible what's coming, we also have to look after all the casualties on both sides.
We need to take another short break here, so let me reintroduce you. If you're just joining us, my guest is writer and filmmaker Werner Hertzog. His new memoir is called Every Man for Himself and God Against All. We'll be right back. This is Fresh Air. Programming is supported by M Health Fairview Heart Care. M Health Fairview's Southscale Hospital was recently ranked #1
A new book out.
for cardiology and
80 movies.
by health rates. Learn more at mhealthfairview.org/heartcare.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Indeed, designed to be an end-to-end hiring solution for businesses of all sizes to attract, interview, and hire candidates, all from a single platform. Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR. And from Renewal by Anderson, supporter of the American Cancer Society. Information about Renewal by Anderson's October campaign to help defeat cancer is at renewalbyandersoncares.com.
This is Fresh Air. Let's get back to my interview with writer and filmmaker Werner Hertzog. His new memoir is called Every Man for Himself and God Against All. The first time you narrated a film was when you made a film for a production company in Germany that specialized in extreme subjects. And you did a film for them about ski jumping, which you knew a lot about having grown up in the mountains in Bavaria. And you used to like build God, what are they called? Like platforms to jump off, to ski off of? Ramps, yes. And got terribly injured during one of those. And a friend of yours got terribly injured one of his jumps. But anyway, so you